In the murky depths of the Whisper Marshes, where gnarled cypress knees clawed at the sky and dragonflies hummed haunting tunes, stood the Howling Markan Tavern. High on stilts it loomed, a crooked wooden frame glowing with the promise of warmth and shadowy secrets beneath a swollen moon that spilled silver light across the swamp. It was here that the laws of the mundane world seemed to bend. Here where the veil between realities was thinnest and the dead often lingered. Here where beasts of legend stalked the dragonfly-haunted mists and witches brewed oblivion into their ales. This was the domain of the Moonlit Pack, a fellowship of chihuahuas unlike any dog pack that ever roamed the mortal plane. They were small, fierce, and possessed of powers beyond mortal ken. They were the Howlers. They were the Maroons, and they were the bane of every creature foolish enough to cross them. On this night, the tavern buzzed with restless energy. Hooded figures whispered in corners, eyes gleaming with an unearthly blue fire as they plotted fates of mortals and monsters alike. At the far end of the bar, a woman with emerald eyes leaned against the rough-hewn wood, her hand resting near a mug of frothing ale. Her gaze was fixed on the flickering light above her head, lost in thought. Near her, an inhuman patron with skin like damp stone sat close by, his presence as still and unyielding as the ancient cypress trees that choked the swamp's surface. His head was bowed, obscuring the features of his face, but occasionally he would lift his head to take a swig of his steaming drink, his eyes glowing with an inner luminescence. But what drew the most attention were the chihuahuas. There were dozens of them scattered about the tavern, each one exuding an air of power and menace. One sat on a bar stool, a tiny paw hooked around a mug larger than its head, staring boldly at anyone foolish enough to meet its eyes. Another rested its chin against the table, glaring with an expression that spoke of old battles and grudges. Near the water's edge, two more kept watch, their ears twitching in rhythm with the soft croaks of frogs. Others lounged lazily, sharing scraps of meat and gnawing on bones as though they had just returned from a hunt. They were no ordinary dogs. Everyone in the swamp knew that. These were the Moonlit Pack, guardians of the tavern and enforcers of a law older than any kingdom nearby. Some whispered that they were cursed sorcerers, trapped in canine bodies for their sins. Others claimed they were spirits of the swamp itself, bound by ancient pacts to keep the balance between mortal travelers and the things that lurked in the marsh. As the night deepened, the tavern sign creaked in the breeze, the Howling Markan, a name that was never explained, yet always respected. Anyone who passed through its doors quickly learned to mind their tongue, for this was neutral ground, a place where even enemies might drink side by side so long as the pack watched. But on this night, something stirred that threatened that fragile balance. The woman at the bar glanced nervously toward the entrance as the door creaked open. A tall figure entered, clad in a cloak so dark it seemed to swallow the lantern light. The air grew colder, and even the swamp creatures fell silent. His boots dripped swamp water onto the wooden planks as he approached the bar, ignoring the hooded patrons who stiffened at his presence. The tavern suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. And as he reached for the worn wooden counter, a hush fell over the room. The stranger removed his hood, revealing a face pale as bone, with eyes the color of dried blood. He smiled faintly, though the expression carried no warmth. "Evening," he rasped, his voice like brittle leaves. "I hear this place welcomes all." The barmaid gave a cautious nod. "All who abide by the rules." The man's gaze drifted down to the chihuahua beside him, who had not looked away once. For a long moment, the two locked eyes. A ripple of unease passed through the room, and the other chihuahua stirred, one growling softly, another hopping onto the bar with its hackles raised. The pale man chuckled. "Ah, so it's true. The guardians are dogs." "They are more than that," the stone-skinned patron muttered, his first words of the evening. "Mind your tongue, stranger." The pale man ignored him. Instead, he leaned closer to the chihuahua. "Tell me, little one, How long can you keep watch before your curse breaks? A deep growl rolled through the tavern. Every chihuahua present lifted its head, ears forward, eyes burning with a light that was not natural. The tavern itself seemed to shudder, lantern flames bending as though caught in a sudden wind. The pale man's smile widened. Ah, so it is a curse. Good. That means curses can be broken. With that, he extended a hand toward the chihuahua at the bar, only to freeze as sharp teeth snapped inches from his fingers. In a blur, 3 more chihuahuas leapt onto the counter, growling low, their small bodies trembling with a fury that promised blood. The woman at the bar whispered, "You should leave, now." But the pale man did not move. Instead, he slowly withdrew his hand, lips curling into something between amusement and contempt. "I will leave," he said softly, "but not for long. The moon wanes, and when it fades, so will your guardians. Then this place will be mine." With that, he turned, cloak sweeping behind him, and walked back into the swamp. The door creaked shut, leaving only silence in his wake. For a moment, no one moved. Then the chihuahua on the bar let out a sharp bark, breaking the tension. The others relaxed, returning to their drinks, their scraps, and their watch. The woman released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "What was he talking about?" she asked. The stone-skinned man finally lifted his steaming drink and took a slow sip. "Every curse has its cracks," he said grimly. "And there are those who know how to pry them open." The barmaid shivered, glancing out the window at the glowing swamp. The mushrooms pulsed with blue light, and the shadows between the trees seemed thicker than before. The Howling Markan had stood for centuries, guarded by the moonlit pack, but tonight, for the first time in memory, doubt had entered with the swamp mist, and somewhere, out there in the dark, the pale man waited. But the chihuahuas, small though they were, curled their lips back from their teeth and growled at the night, ready to protect their tavern and the fragile peace it held, until the moon fell or their curse finally broke. This tale is part of a shared world created by myself and a friend. We each crafted a piece of lore set within the same fictional universe, weaving together a tapestry of myth and magic that spans across realms. Within this world, magic is woven into the fabric of reality, existing alongside technology in a delicate balance. The very essence of magic is drawn from the emotions of mortals, growing stronger with their hopes and fears, their loves and their wars. Magic is as ubiquitous as the stars in the sky, and its influence is as subtle as the whisper of wind through the trees. Those who learn to harness its power do so at a great cost, forever altering the course of their lives. Yet even in the darkest corners of this world, hope endures, whispering promises of redemption and second chances. The battle between light and darkness rages, and the fate of realms hangs in the balance. But ultimately, it is the choices of the individuals within this world that determine its destiny. Are you ready to explore more of this magical realm? Let me know in the comments. Which character would you want to join on their journey through the magical realm?